This is Mike speaking from IELTSanswers.com with another video to help explain the speaking band descriptors based on the public version. This is available on I've got a link to it on my website, but it's being produced by these guys who run the IELTS exam. So in previous videos I have talked about fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and now I'm going to talk about pronunciation. So, as with the other videos, I'm going to use a Word document and just try to explain things a little bit based on this public version and also compare different levels. So, essentially, your score for pronunciation is influenced by a couple of things. The first one is where how difficult you are to understand and whether your accent influences this. So different languages have different accents and pronounce words in slightly different ways, and then this can make it challenging when you come to speak English, and it can make it difficult for a native speaker to understand somebody who's got a different language background at times. Let me give you a couple of examples of these. So I'm not going to name nationalities, but certain nationalities have troubles with different sounds. Let's take some can't say TH sounds, so instead of I think it will be maybe I sink, or instead of I like that it will be I like lat, L sound. Some nationalities like to roll their R's. That can make it difficult to understand sometimes. So instead of say red rooster, it will come out red rooster. And that can be a little bit troublesome. I said I won't name nationalities, but I'll name a couple. Vietnamese and Thai students, they have trouble with the final sounds when speaking English. So their languages are very lovely to listen to, and part of the reason is they have soft endings at the end of words, so they don't have hard consonant sounds like we do in English, like D's and G's and K's. As a consequence, often for people from this region of the world, they have trouble pronouncing the end sounds on English words. So maybe, for example, instead of child, the D won't get pronounced, then it'll come out like child. Instead of IELTS, it'll be like IEL, seven, seven's different, so that's a different issue. Okay, so our first language can affect our second language, and one of the things that you want to do to prepare for your exam is to try and get rid of those sounds that are not natural, that are different to a native English speaker. And my advice, if you do want to do that, is you have to practice and practice and practice. Because even if you can say it right, you need to get it automatic so that it comes out right without thinking. Okay, the other aspect that's really, really important and probably less understood, language features of a native speaker. Now, what are these? Well, I mentioned Thai. Thai, like Chinese, is a tonal language. So one of the challenges I've had learning to speak Chinese and Thai is that words have different tones, and the meaning can be totally different just based on the tone. So, for example, in Chinese, mother has a kind of flat tone like ma. I don't know, did that right? Ma. And horse has a kind of falling, rising tone like ma. So that caused me trouble, and similar issues when I learned Thai. Different words with different tones can cause a problem. The word in Thai for near and far is almost the same, and that causes me problems when listening, but also speaking. For me, it's like, why would you pick almost the same word to describe near and far when those could be so easily confused. But it doesn't make sense to me, but it does to Thais because they can hear the tones. Same for Chinese, they can hear the tones. Okay, what do native English speakers use? They have intonation, so it's not. It can be on single words, but it's more at a phrasal level. So we would use a rising intonation at the end of a yes/no question. Are you ready? Are you ready? And we'd expect a yes or no answer. But if it was a non-yes or no question, we would have a falling intonation at the end of the sentence. Where do you want to go? So, are you ready? Where do you want to go? We have different intonation for different question types. Stress can be on a single word. Every word, one syllable will be stressed more than another one, and if you get that wrong, it can make things a little bit tricky. So, for example, if we've got the word understand, let's see, the stand has the stress, so it's understand. Stand is bigger than the rest. If you put it on the middle syllable, it sounds strange. Do you understand? Do you understand? Sounds weird to me. But I have students that say it that way, so I have to teach them it's understand. The middle syllable is very weak. And then rhythm. We should have some natural rhythm when speaking. We should not speak too slow like a robot. English is not an equal beat language. We should have some rhythm, some intonation, and we should stress important things in our sentences. And then these are the language features of a native speaker. Okay, let's go up and have a look at the different band levels and see what's required to get to these different scores. So a 6 must have some intonation, stress, and rhythm. Must be some to reach a 6. If there's none, then you're going to 5 or 4 even. So you must have some of these features of a native speaker. You must use some intonation, stress, and rhythm. So if you're preparing for the test, make sure you have some of this. Mixed control and not sustained. So not always used correctly. And let's say like with the rhythm, it may not always be sustained. It might break down when the speaker is not quite sure what they're saying. They might slow down a bit and lose a bit of rhythm, but they must show rhythm in other parts. There must be some rhythm or you're not getting your 6. Now, for a 7, there has to be good usage of these features. And it needs to be sustained. Here it's not sustained. Here it needs to be sustained. Occasional lapses. There might still be some inappropriacies. There might still be the understand instead of understand. Okay, so that's a 7. And then an 8 uses a wide range of pronunciation features. So these are used widely, and it no longer says occasional lapses. So let's just say 1 or 2 lapses throughout the speaking test. Otherwise, it needs to be maintained. Okay, so really important. If you're trying to target higher scores, you must be able to use some of these features, intonation and stress. You must have rhythm when you're speaking. If you cannot do this, you're not ready for your test. Okay, then we mentioned about accent. So let's have a look at a bit down here. Can generally be understood throughout, though mispronunciation of individual words or sounds reduces clarity at times. Reduces clarity, so it's still clear. The examiner, the listener, can understand what you're saying. It's clear, but maybe requires a little bit of effort on their behalf. But it's still clear. If it's not clear, if mispronunciation is so severe that there's a loss of clarity that or comprehension, even intelligibility, the examiner just doesn't know what word you're saying, that's suggesting back this way where you don't want to be 5, even 4. Okay. So here we've got this reduction of clarity. Here we've got the same thing, easy to understand throughout. L1 has, that means your first language, minimal effect on intelligibility. So there's almost no breakdown in communication that's caused through accent. So I mentioned earlier about the red rooster. It might be okay for a 7. That rolling R sound might be okay. You might get away with that to get a 7. And I guess the main reason is that it's still obvious that we're talking about red. I like red car. It still can be understood. But if, let's say we have, we're not pronouncing our THs, and in part 3 we're talking about our opinion. And instead of saying I think, we're saying I sink. I sink. I think you may not get a 7 if you say sink. You really need to say think. So I would say that that error is more serious. Sink is more serious than red. Okay, so that we can think about what the errors are and then what's the effect of them. And here it's reducing the clarity, so sink, I can probably still understand it, but here minimal effect, red rooster. Okay, and then we get to 8, easy to understand throughout, so not requiring much effort, minimal effect on intelligibility, that's the same as before, so this whole thing's the same. What's the difference in terms of this? Well, that's an interesting point. We can see up here that we've got a wider range of features. What's the difference between these two? It's not really made clear. So let's just say it this way. This one, minimal effect. This one, and even more minimal effect. That there should really be no difficulty at all. With this rolling R sound, it might be possible to get to 8, especially if it's not too heavy. And then you have to think about the other mistakes. If it was just that R sound alone, that might be all right. But maybe there's also the rolling H sound, so the kind of I don't know if I can make it her. Oh no, that's still R. That's still the R. Let me think of another example. Let's just put it this way. If it was just one sound and it wasn't too heavy, because sometimes the R can be rolled, but not as heavy as I'm doing it. I'm overdoing it a bit just to make my point clearer. Let's just say minor rolling of the R and not too many other problems. That'd be fine. But if there were multiple errors, I was mentioning about the H. Sometimes certain nationalities have trouble with H's. They leave them out. So instead of help, it's like help. I cannot help it. In that case, that's not a minimal effect, and actually it could stop the 7 as well. So remember, these come from these public thingies, these public descriptors. They haven't really made this that clear. So let's just say this one's a minimal effect, and this one almost no effect. This should be like a near-native speaker. There should be almost no problems to understand the way this person's speaking. There might be some noticeable differences. There might still be an accent, but it's not affecting the listener's ability to understand what they're saying. That's the key point here, is the effect of the accent. Everybody has an accent. I have an accent. What's my accent? It's a mixture, really. I'm originally from New Zealand, so I have that influence of been living in Australia. I have that influence. I've lived in America, so I have that influence. I've lived in Taiwan, where American English is preferred, and I'm exposed to it more. So I guess my accent is a unique blend of all of those things. So everybody has an accent. Even some native speakers have very heavy accents that can make them difficult to understand, and that's another interesting thing too. What if a person is a native speaker and they have a very heavy accent? Well, if it was starting to affect intelligibility, then it could be that they would get a lower score. It's a possibility, right? Because their accent is having an effect on intelligibility. There is this sort of sense too, though, of world languages, and that we shouldn't give any particular form of English a priority over others. This is supposed to be an international test, so we're not supposed to really favour, like, okay, this person speaks with an American accent, so that's better than other native English speaking accents. So that's just a couple of ideas that I would throw out there about that. So yeah, if you are a English student and you were learning, say, in Glasgow, for instance, where the accent's very heavy and no disrespect there or whatever, but it is a heavy accent. And then you took the speaking test. If you took your speaking test in Glasgow, it probably wouldn't be an issue. But let's say you took it in another part of the world. In theory, there should be no effect. In reality, yeah, there might be. Sometimes tests are like that. They're not always 100% fair, and that's just reality. And really, there's no test that's perfect, is there? So anyway, so let's just summarize like I've done with the other videos. Essentially, we've got these features of a native speaker, and the more you use these, the higher up your score goes. And then we've got your accent and your pronunciation, and as you make errors, as it becomes more difficult to understand what you're saying, down goes your score. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. If you want to see other videos on the other grading criteria, then subscribe to my channel, IELTS Answers, or just search on it. If you like any of the videos, give it a thumbs up. Happy to receive any comments, especially if they're positive. I like positive comments. Negative comments, yeah, okay, as long as they're reasonable, that's fine as well. I don't really need to know if I've misspelled a word or something. Sometimes there's typos, and if I discover one, I'll try and put a note about it. Okay, hope you've enjoyed that video, or at least you find something about it useful in terms of understanding grading in terms of pronunciation.